broadcasting live from the Roanoke Valley of southwestern Virginia. Join us and see what life looks like from a medium's perspective with Reverend Tracey Lockwood, the medium's medium. We'll explore the tools of psychic development, hear stories and experiences from the other side, and learn to listen to our natural intuition. Now, our host, Reverend Tracey Lockwood.
Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. Before we get started with today's show, I'd just like to remind you that if you're interested in a private reading or private tutoring, or if you would like to work out a private curriculum with me, one-on-one training via Zoom anywhere in the world, or if you're interested in a professional psychic mediumship certification program with 3 levels of certification, and it's suitable for practitioners of all levels. So if you're interested, check out my website at TraceyLockwood.com. Well, today I have a guest that I just learned to love her on Facebook. She is an amazing mind and just a beautiful soul. She's a spiritual teacher, and she's also a psychic and a medium and channel, and she offers psychic life coaching and messages from heaven readings. She's attended Lilydale. I've never had a chance to get up there. It's a spiritualist camp. And she's been to Arthur Findlay College. We share that in common. She has also been at the Fellowships of the Spirit and Journey Within, Delphi University, and several spiritualist churches. And when you hear spiritualist churches, people are like, yeah, spiritualist churches. But what that means is that she's cared enough to develop her evidence to a great depth. So I really respect her as a peer in the field. Without further ado, want to introduce her. Her name is Gayle Kirk. Welcome to the show, Gayle. First of all, our listeners like to kind of track who we're talking about during the show. So why don't you give them your website and way that they can reach you?
It's GaylKirk.com, spelled GaylElekirk.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Tell us what you might share with us today.
I really love the idea of us focusing on ourselves as a soul here on earth, living as our higher selves. Mediumship is calling forth the awareness that we are more than just our physical bodies, that we are eternal spirit and life goes on. But beyond that, what does that really mean, that we are spirit? I really want to look at that more because I think that's what our whole world is growing towards in this stage of enlightenment. And that's why so many people are being called to open up their psychic, mediumship, and channeling abilities.
Yeah, it seems like everywhere we turn, I know it's the same for you too. You've been in a professional field a lot longer than I have. I didn't start doing private readings until 2011 after coming back from Arthur Findlay. Do you find that people are more and more doing that? I've never encountered so many people that are like, oh my God, this happened to me, or I saw this, or I heard this, or I felt this, and they're just kind of surprised at some of the things that are coming to them. And then I'm seeing among my students, and you probably see this with yours, just a really quick pickup of ability. It just seems like, oh yeah, we're awake now. Now we know what to do or something. I mean, they do need help and guidance, obviously, because disciplining your abilities and developing them to a deeper level does take some support on occasion. I heard someone the other day say something like, just because you saw a spirit doesn't make you a medium. And I thought, LOL. I'm curious. I see in my practice a lot of people opening up spontaneously around me. And even though I've kind of done this all my life, I didn't formally start doing it till I was about 50, like in 2010 to 2011, I guess, is when I started working professionally. in this and just beginning readings and building things up. And it just seems like so many people are absolutely gobsmacked because they're having these experiences with spirit. Are you seeing that? You've been in the practice a lot longer than I have. What have you seen over the course of your practicing professionally?
At that time, James Van Praagh had just started coming on to the television scene, showing what mediumship was prior to him. And I watched a lot of TV.
Yeah, love
I
him.
didn't see
Love
anybody
him.
on TV doing anything like that except Samantha Stevens of Bewitched, who I used to watch
Right.
all the time and wanted to be like. He was the first, and he helped me to almost legitimize what I had always felt and loved and experimented with. And I used to have seances at my birthday parties when I was a young teenager with my girlfriends and mom, and we would go into the bathroom and turn on our red night light and turn off all the other lights and try and connect with George Washington.
Oh, that's so cool.
And we'd try and levitate each other with, the person would lie down and we'd surround them and put our two fingers underneath them and try and lift them up and anything that was sort of mystical and mysterious. And at age 13, my good friend found a Ouija board in her house, and that just totally set the tone then for the next 10 years.
Wow.
Every time I would stay at her house, we would play on the Ouija board. And honestly, we were really talking with spirit.
It's interesting, like, generally speaking, for novices, I don't recommend the Ouija board because it is an open portal and some people go at it with less of a pure intent than you did. And so they're just sort of like gratuitously seeing what's out there or drinking and trying to
have a party
or whatever. That not a good idea. But for somebody, I feel like you're such an old soul that it seems like you just slipped into something that you must have done in a prior life or continued something that you were doing.
I feel like that.
Yeah, I know that you have attended some pretty prestigious places. You've studied with teachers in Lilydale, Arthur Findlay College, Fellowships of the Spirit, Journey Within, Delphi University, and several spiritualist churches. And all of those have a high standard of practice as far as demonstrating mediumship. What stands out to you? What was the best? Not the best like between them, but some of the best moments that you had when you were developing?
In the beginning, it's especially exciting because it's also full of discovery and new and exciting and mysterious and wonderful and incredible and amazing. And it just blows you away every day. So the classes in the beginning, when you're just opening your gifts, are just really exciting and eye-opening, and you just feel like you're on a high the whole time you're in one of those classes. It's very challenging and you get impatient and frustrated too, but it's really exciting. And so I think even looking back now, the early years were some of the best years, even.
Oh, yeah. Maybe sort of like a rush of confirmation. It's sort of like something we know about ourselves, but we've never had any kind of validation or conversation about it. So when you had a lot of conversation about it, but like that experience of sitting with like-minded others, and it is a rush.
There's really no other place out in the real world right now, the way things still are, even though they're a lot more open than they used to be, where you can just talk about, oh, I talked to Grandma last night. Well, Grandma's in heaven. Yeah. I mean, it's not any big deal. And what did she tell you? And my spirit guide, I know, was giving me a sign about my life purpose because I had this experience. And everybody listens acceptingly, lovingly, and openly. And I think the world's moving to a bit more of a receptive place in that way. But in the earlier days in particular, but even now, going to a school and being surrounded with like-minded folks is really life-affirming because it helps you to value what your innate gifts are, your connection with spirit, our own ourselves as spirit and helps us to really see and believe in the world being a magical place, which I think we tend to lose as we become adults.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It is, I kind of have thought about it sometimes, like when we're children, we see and perceive so naturally and often see interdimensional beings or spirits or elementals or something like that. And we're often told that those things are not real. And so we either second guess ourselves or privately enjoy that or stay within a small group that we can talk about those things. And then as we start really training and deepening our mediumship, it's really mind-blowing. It's like, whoa, it's real. Like there are people from other planets. There are, fairies and elves, and there are spirits that are there. It wasn't our imagination too.
And we really are being guided and loved and supported by this other realm that people may or may not believe exists, but is real.
Yeah, yeah. How would you differentiate? I have that I say about the difference between a psychic medium and a channel. How would you say that?
Well, I love to read and learn, and so I can give you what would be more of a bookish kind of answer. Mm-hmm. And then I can also sort of say what I see as the sort of universal definition of the mainstream society for what it is, and then sort of what a heartfelt answer is. But I'll try and just say that it depends on how you look at it. And essentially what, for me, it boils down to, a psychic is someone who is connecting with the energy of a person, place, or thing that is typically in the three-dimensional world, and is connecting with the past, present, and potential future of things to give you guidance and clarity and understanding and healing to help you, empower you to make good choices. I see a mental and what is called an evidential medium nowadays is someone who connects with those who have passed over, who are still living another life in another world, a place that we will all go to because we are eternal spirits too. So the mediums, as we call them today, are most often connecting with loved ones on the other side, although that can be expanded to include physical mediums who do all kinds of other exciting things with energy and connections with spirit. And then there's also mediums who do channeling, which again takes all kinds of stages from speaking as our higher self, where we are just more in an elevated place of connection within ourselves to our own soul and guide and gods, but also to maybe a more influenced and overshadowed way from spirit, where we could even be in full trance like Edgar Cayce and not remember anything and be giving information that's of a helpful nature directly from spirit.
I like that. I like that. You said that you have kind of would that be your intuitive interpretation of?
Well, that's kind of how most people think of it nowadays. But I think what's happening, and I've noticed even with my own trying to be clear in my website with the definition of what I do, because I have a very strong logical, rational, analytical side, that as I grow too in my own awareness and knowledge and gifts, I'm really doing it all. And so it's kind of hard to give it a label because it's kind of a combination of whatever is needed at the time.
Yeah, I do. I remember someone telling me probably at Arthur Findlay that, working on your psychic skills builds your mediumship and vice versa. Your mediumship skills build your psychic ability too. I think of it because I came out of a more religious background. Well, maybe not more religious, but a religious background. And I was in the Pentecostal church and taught Bible studies in my 20s. And I was doing exactly what I do now, but we had different names for it. We called intuition a word of knowledge, something that you just know. And we called psychic ability a word of wisdom, because you're really smart, but it's just beyond us. And then mediumship, of course, is the discerning of spirits. And channeling is tongues and interpretation, which is the languages of men and angels.
Yes, exactly.
There. And so I have it kind of like as an intuitive continuum. And I imagine us, here in the dense earth plane. And as we open up our awareness of higher and higher frequencies, we move through expressions of that. The first level, being our intuitive level. And then as we start really opening up, then our psychic, we start connecting with a little bit higher vibrational plane. And then by the mediumship, we're able to identify the sources of that information and connect into that even higher plane. And by channeling, like you mentioned, you might even just completely, depends on the level of altered state you're in, but go into possibly a thing. I like how you said that, though. Thank you.
I also would say, to be clear, to be careful that we don't make one sound higher in a sense as
no, yes, not, yes, no. No, I think
because they're all valuable and important and necessary.
Oh, absolutely.
And so one isn't but really better than another. They're just different.
No, it is. It is. At Arthur Findlay, when I was there, and you've been there as well, they have a sort of a process like connect with spirit, give the evidence, then give the message. And I could do that, but my more natural way was looking at the energy, tapping into the colors and imagery that I was seeing, and then connecting with spirit. I could do it both ways. And I had Minister Val Williams pull me to the side, and she said, don't ever stop doing it the way that you do it, because some people, like you said, the value is high, whether psychic or medium. Well, welcome back, Gayle. For those of you listening, her website is gaylekirk.com, and we're in the midst of talking about unfolding abilities and what it all means here. So,
good to be with you.
Oh, glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. What's your thought on whether people, like if everyone has psychic, mediumship, or channeling ability? What do you think about that?
Well, I believe that we as spirit are all connected to our higher self, soul, which is part of God, source, divine mind, spirit, however you want to define that. So everybody has the ability and potential to connect with their spirit that is within them, their soul, which is a part of that higher consciousness that knows, that sees, that is aware, that can guide. However, some people are more easily able to do that, and some people are more easily able to learn that. But we're all growing in our abilities and awarenesses and all have potentials for that, because that is a divine gift of God. That's who we are. It's connecting with our essence. But can everybody go out and play the piano or teach math or do a picture of art? Not exactly, even if we take classes. So there is, to some extent, natural abilities that come into play and lifetimes of experience that come into play and our purpose in this lifetime that comes into play. But I do believe with effort and knowledge and training and understanding, we can all grow towards that.
Oh, I definitely believe that we can. I think energy follows focus, and not everybody wants to talk to dead people.
Exactly.
And of course they're not dead, but not everyone has that interest. But I find those that are drawn to it and those that are curious whether or not they have that ability and have an interest in reaching out for training, I do find them able to do it. They often surprise themselves how able they are,
What I'm finding interesting as I get older and grow in my own awareness of spirituality is that I feel we're all growing in our consciousness, and that these gifts lie within us to connect to source for information and guidance and knowledge, and that we are all so hungry for that and wanting to feel connected to that essence of who we are, that people are being drawn to develop psychic mediumship and channeling gifts, when maybe really what they're looking for is a connection with spirit and their own spirit.
Well
and
said.
So it's coming underneath that, guys, because right now the consciousness of the world is embracing that and offering that. But in a, I think eventually we're all going to strive to just be it and
Yes.
be that higher self, no matter what it is we do in this world.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that, because first of all, for you to connect, you have to kind of get really real with yourself, because there's no way that you can read well for someone else if you can't detach from your opinions and your mindset and let go of some of the emotional overlays and projections that you have that are things that we weathered perhaps in our childhood or growing up or coming to the point in our life that we are when we do seek that. One thing that I rarely see, thankfully rarely see, but on occasion see, is someone who looks at it as if it's, and I think this is due to the level of performance mediumship that's available in the media, you know, the platform mediums that are stage mediums. They're there as demonstration mediums, and that is their purpose. And they do, I mean, not that they don't do private readings as well, but you know, they're there kind of like the juggernauts of the field to break open the ice for the rest of us that do this but don't have an interest in being on stage. But sometimes people see that and they associate it with glamour or power, and mistakenly think like, oh, I want to be a psychic medium so I can read people's minds, or so I can, you know, be the amazing you know, Kreskin or something like that. And I really hate it when I see the intent of someone perverted by looking at the field like it's something to bring power or to bring glory to them, because of course the heart of it is service and healing too.
That's true for every field, but I think what we're all being called forth to do is recognize the spirit within us. And right now, the alternative to religions, if that's what people are wanting, is to go in a more new agey route, typically, and that usually means psychic mediumship channeling development.
Yeah, right.
It's
going
not
from
called
a
higher
more
self-development.
yes,
Unless you're maybe a yogi and you're from India and you're studying meditation and self-realization, which is what it's all about.
in some
But we're
life,
talking
yes.
about it with different terminology. And we're not really even talking about the soul's growth along with all of that. And that's where I think we're all heading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do feel that transformative thing, but I'm sure that it's more profound because you have a long view of it too. And I envy that, just so you know, not in a greedy way, but just in a admiration way that you've been serving this way for so long. I love what you post on Facebook and the type of discussions that you get going.
Thank you.
I think how we maybe first met.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Yeah. So what would you say about the fact that that we are sort of, you know, mediumship is an awareness of us as spirits? What would you have to say about that?
Well, the whole evidential mental mediumship of demonstrating privately or in public to show that people have survived their physical death and still exist as a spirit, as consciousness, is helping people to know that they too will survive, that there is, in fact, no death of the spirit and of our consciousness. And therefore, if we exist as a consciousness, what is that? What does that mean? And how can we use that in a more profound and awakened and aware and enlightened way while we're here on earth, rather than waiting till we're dead?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it does. It adds an entire dimension to life that we miss if we're not aware that
So I
it's
think at
there.
some point it's going to grow more into what does that mean? Because everybody's going to start to go, yeah, I know we still live, but what about how to make the most here on earth?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think I think there have been kind of waves of mediumship, uh, first it was just proving that life continues, kind of the 1800s, we live, we love, we are with you still kind of basic
Right.
concept. And then you mentioned James von Prague, Sylvia Brown, currently, Teresa Caputo, John Edwards, blah, 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 that are these demonstration mediums. But you've already touched on what I'm seeing as the future of mediumship, which is everybody doing it, where it isn't such a external thing. What are your thoughts on the future of psychic mediumship and channeling? Where do you see that going, either globally or in our culture?
Well, I see a lot more people doing channeling right now than ever before as well, because at least here in the United States, it kind of started with Jane Roberts and Seth, and then Esther Hicks and Abraham going bang, gangbusters and all over the country and hugely well known.
Yes.
And Sanea Roman and Dwayne Packer with Orrin and Dobbin out of Oregon with their wonderful stuff. And then Paul Selig nowadays doing his thing, and other channels, Cryon, Lazarus, and other people like that you'll find through these different channeling conferences. But so now what I'm seeing, in addition to more people becoming mediums, is more people becoming channels. And so what I would say is that I think eventually, although I love the idea of philosophy and guidance and intelligence coming from spirit, when it truly does come from them, and always accessing and learning from the higher realms, that's super important to me. But I also think it's about empowering ourselves to become all that we can be as our own spirit, so that we don't have to become someone else or have to allow someone else to speak through us, although that can be valuable. But where more often we here on earth are owning our power, owning our spirituality, and living as our higher selves here on earth, creating peace on earth, creating heaven on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a 5-year-old come to me. His mom brought him because he's able to see auras and see, predict things and that kind of thing. And she was considering having him come train with me. And I asked him, I said, I hear you see colors. What color are you? And he said, green. And I said, any other colors? And he said, just green. And he starts drawing like an auric field, and I guess that would have been his predominant color. I didn't take a minute to look. I was kind of intrigued with his perceptions. And so I asked him, I said, well, what colors are your mom, or what color is your mom? And he goes, pink, of course. And he looked at me like, are you an idiot? Like, of course,
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I said, well, what color am I? And he goes, and he picks up all the crayons and he goes, all of these.
Oh, that's nice.
And it was so, like, I thought, I don't think the terms, like, I think, like we were talking earlier in the show, the biblical terms of tongues and interpretation and discerning of spirits, defining mediumship and channeling. I don't think mediumship and channeling are going to hang on forever as terms because it's so natural. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know what it would be called, except I'm thinking of just using the word soul a lot more and higher self a lot more, and helping us understand what that is. And God consciousness. Some people say Christ consciousness, but a lot of people don't like to say that because they have a different kind of interpretation or a kind of religious experience that makes them feel uncomfortable about that. Plus, because a lot of Christians have made it seem like you have to come through only Jesus to go to heaven and all of this other stuff.
Very narrow.
Which is not what Jesus said.
No. No.
But through the type of consciousness that he carried. So we can call it other things, and I'm so happy to be able to do that because I want to be inclusive and say this is for everybody.
I wanted to get a little personal. Our show is over about 5 minutes before the hour, but you shared with me that your brother took his own life in 2008. This is a delicate question, but how did that shift anything for you as a professional? Like, how did you manage that, and how did it?
Well, it made it a lot more real and personal to want to talk, to want to help people know that life goes on and to help heal those who were grieving, because I had experienced now a significant loss of my own. I had been doing mediumship for 10 years prior to my brother passing, and my heart was always in the right place of service.
Sure.
But I didn't feel it as personally as I now do.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, I know because it gave you, was it a particular dimension of compassion, or what I guess I'm asking because, at some point I'm going to be losing someone significant to me in the next few months. And I'm just wondering how did you weather that? How did knowing that they exist help at all?
Yeah, it does, but it still hurts because we're human. There's the real side to missing their physical presence, missing their laughter, missing joking with them and teasing and playing around and having them at the parties and at the dinners and at the holidays and the family vacations. And then the other difficulty is seeing the weight and sadness that other people, like his children and my parents now, experience quite often because of his passing and the effects that have happened since he took his own life. There's a lot of repercussions there and a lot of new things that come up now with regards to his passing. So there's a lot to take in, and we're all doing well, but it's a healing process. And one of the things that I was able to do, I think, is to help steer my family into a good direction with it all without trying to be too preachy. But as I would have dreams from him and real visitations and signs, I would ask if they wanted to hear, and then they said yes, and I would lovingly and excitedly share them with them. And that opened them up to the possibility of receiving for themselves. And I always said, I want to hear when you experience something, and then they would share with me. So it brought us closer together, and I think it opened up some people into their deeper spirituality that they didn't previously think too much about, or even have that much clarity on whether or not there is life after death, or even a belief in it.
Yeah. I think because we're eternal beings, somewhere inside us, regardless of our view, whether we're atheist or whether we are religious or whatever our perspective is, just deep down inside, it just seems like there's got to be more, like there has to be something beyond this. And that sense of eternal nature. And of course, when we realize that we aren't finished when we're here, when we pass from the physical world, that is comforting to know that we will see them again.
Oh, very much so.
And that they are still with us. Some of those basic things that, we're trying to be impressed into the mental space of people in the turn of the century, that they are still here, that they do love us, and that they are with us. It does, but it doesn't. I think it's important for our listeners to know that just because you lost someone and are a fantastic medium and can easily connect, it doesn't remove the loss itself.
No, you're still in the body. You still miss their physical presence, but you begin to relate to them in new ways. And for a while, you're going to still be sad and cry when you think of them. What I learned that might be helpful real quick is that every time he came around me, I would start to cry. And so for a while, he stayed away so that I wouldn't be sad until I could be strong enough to receive him, except through dreams. He did come through dreams. And now if I pick him up, it's in a joking, fun, playful way.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So I know he's healed and he knows I have healed. And now it's just back to being, silly like we used to be.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I really appreciate your sharing that. I know that was a personal experience for you.
It's important.
Yeah. Just in closing, what are some ways that our loved ones try to connect with us?
Well, dreams are huge, so always ask for a dream. And it may take a while till your energy is calm enough to receive them or for them to be able to connect with you. Because when they're when they're on the other side, they're going through a life review, they're meeting their family and friends and other people that they've known from other lifetimes. There's a lot going on. There's a reason that they're there. And they also have to learn how to communicate, I've been told. So it does take some time, but mostly we need time too. So I ask everybody to wait at least 6 months before they even try and have a reading. But certainly you can have a dream right away. And I have had several within the first month that he had passed. And so had his children. So do ask for the dream or a sign or tell them. Anytime I see whatever is meaningful to you, a butterfly, a dragonfly, a coin, a rose, let that be my sign, your sign to me that you're with us.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Unconventional in the sense that I don't have a time frame because, but I do try to differentiate the experience of that spirit. Whoops, we're at the end of the Gayle, it's too short. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracey. It was awesome.
Thank you. GayleKirk.com if you want to reach Gayle. Medium Tracey Lockwood if you want to .com if you want to reach me. And remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind. And without integrity, you have nothing.